Brothers and sisters, so I have decided to do this video, right? Because so I was studying my Bible some days ago, last week thereabout, and this particular scripture, came to me. I saw it, and one way or the other, I let it go. I kept, on reading or studying the scripture, other places in the Bible, and then, it came back to me that I should go back and do some studies, on this particular scripture, and I had to go back to that place, did a bit of study. I checked my references, looked check out other scriptural references regarding this same thing. And when I checked these other scriptural references, something I don't know how to say it, something in my spirit leaped for joy. And this is what I want to share with you. Do you know that one way of activating the angelic manifestation, in the life of a believer? Like, there are different ways, but I want to share with you one way. As I studied the scripture, this thing then dawned on me that we have power. Christians, like, we have power, unlimited power at our disposal. Now, as I was reading that scripture, it is actually in the book of Daniel's, and I saw how the angel, came to visit Daniel, and what prompted that angel to visit Daniel. We know the story of Daniel very well, how, you know, Daniel and the three Hebrew boys, how they were thrown, into the fire, how they came out, how Daniel interpreted the dream, for the king, and all of that, how all those things happen. But then, as I began to read on Daniel chapter 10, I will read Daniel chapter 10, verse 12 is where the emphasis is on verse 12, right? It says, He says, Then said he unto me. No, before I read on verse 12, let me go back to verse 10 and read on verse 10. Verse 10 says, And behold, an hand touched me, which set me upon my knees and upon the palms of my hands. And he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak unto you, and stand upright. For unto you am I now sent. And when he had spoken these words unto me, I stood trembling. Verse 12 says, Then said he unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you did set your heart to understand and to chasten yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I am come for your words. He says, For from the first day, from the very first day that you set your heart, to know, to seek these things, your words were heard, and I am sent for your words. In other words, the angel told Daniel that, listen to me, the reason I am here is because of the words that came out of your mouth. It's because of the words that came out of your mouth. And this thing struck me, that angels would come because of the words of our mouth, because of the words that proceeds out of our mouths. In other words, for there to be an angelic visitation, for there to be an angelic manifestation in the life of a believer, one of the ways to activate it is by the words of your mouth. So So I ask you today, as a child of God, and this doesn't exclude me as well, what are we saying with our mouths? Because from the scripture, the angel says, because of the words of your mouth, I am calm. Because of the words of your mouth, I am calm. And as I read through the scripture, I saw other places, where there was angelic visitation because of the words of our mouths. Let us open also to the book of Judges chapter 13. Judges chapter 13 from you can read the whole chapter from verse 1, to the end. But this is about, in fact, let me just open and let me read it. Judges chapter 13, so you see what I'm saying. Judges chapter 13, I'll just read the verse number 9, so you see what I'm saying. Verse 9 says, and God hearkened to the voice of Manoah. And God hearkened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again unto the woman as she sat in the field, but Manoah, her husband, was not there. But God hearkened unto the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again. In other words, it was because Manoah, who was the father of Samson, has requested that the angel of God be sent again, so that the angel would come and teach them how to order the life of the child, Samson, that was to be born. Therefore, you see, beloved, God will hearken to the voice of our mouth by sending angels. In other words, we activate angelic manifestation by the words that proceed out of our mouth. So the question is, what are you saying? You want angelic intervention in your life? You want angelic ministration? You want angelic protection? But what are you saying? Because it is the words of our mouth that activates the angels. From what we have seen in Daniel's, where he says, I am now come because of your words. That was Angel Gabriel talking to Daniel. I am now come because of your words. In Judges, he says, God hearkened to the voice of Manoah and sent an angel. And as I began to read this, then I saw another scripture that supports the same thing, and fear gripped me. Like, fear literally gripped me, because many a times as Christians we have walked in error. Many of us, including myself, we have walked in error. But may God help us to trace back in where we've missed it. Let me read this scripture and then wrap up from this one, because this is just a very little session of Bible study. Ecclesiastes chapter 5 and verse 6. Suffer not your mouth to cause your flesh to sin. Can you see that? Suffer not your mouth to cause your flesh to sin. Neither say you before the angel that it was an error. In other words, don't cause your body to sin. Don't cause your flesh to sin because of the words that come out of your mouth. He now says what? Don't say before an angel that it was an error. Wherefore should God be angry at your voice and destroy the works of your hands? Wherefore should God be angry at your voice and destroy the works of your hands? Be angry at your voice. Why? Because you use your voice to utter words that goes contrary to God's will. And when we begin to use our voice to utter words that goes contrary to God's will, the angel of God, right, is incapacitated because of our negative words. That's why he says, don't say before the angel, it was an error. Although, yeah, it was talking about making vows, rash vows, and the likes. Why? Because the angel of God is there to execute the words that come from our mouth. The angel of God is there to execute the voices that proceed from our mouth. Therefore, children of God, child of God, I encourage you by the mercies of God and by this short meditation, let us pay more attention. Let us give utmost care and diligence to the kinds of words that proceed from our mouth. Why? Because when these words proceed, we activate angelic dimensions. We activate the angelic manifestations. And if there are aspects of your life where some things are not going as planned or as expected, it therefore means that we have not activated the angels by the voice of our mouth. By the voice of our mouth, we have not activated angelic ministration. We have not activated angelic manifestation. It says, I am now come because of your words. And God heard the voice, hearkened to the voice of Manoah, and sent the angel of a king, and sent his angel again. Wherefore should the angel be angry? Don't say before the angel it was an error. Wherefore should God be angry and destroy the works of your hands because of your words? May our words not bring destruction to our life. May the Spirit of God help us to activate angelic dimensions in our life as we yield to the voice of the Spirit. I hope you have been blessed. Please leave your comments, leave your thoughts, and share. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.